Hi, this is Ari Kopel and my co-host, Serena. We are here with Shattering the Matrix again. We have our wonderful guest, John Lash, and he is with us today. A lot of you already know him, but for those of you who do not, John Lash has been called the true successor of Mircea Eliade and the rightful heir of Joseph Campbell. Unlike those two world classic academics, John is a self-educated freelance scholar who combines studies and experimental mysticism to teach directive mythology, and that is the application of myth to life rather than its mere interpretation. He is a leading exponent of the power of myth to direct individual experience and drive historical events over the long term. An expert on sidereal mythology, naked eye astronomy, precession, and the world ages. He also teaches the critique of belief systems. On metahistory.org, his website, he presents a radical revision of Gnosticism with original commentaries on the Nag Hammadi codices. He also presents the only complete restoration of any scholar of the Sophionic myth of the pagan mysteries, the sacred story of Gaia Sophia, recounting the origin of the Earth and the human species from the galactic core. Since October of 2008, John Lash is teaching planetary tantra and interactive magic with Gaia through the archetype icon of the Shakti cluster, the Tantric tree of life. This material is intended to orient the general public toward free-form experimental mysticism grounded in an intimate commitment to the earth. His more controversial writings on Kala Tantra, Gaian sexual magic, can be found on Kali Rising, Intimations of a Mystical Hedonist. And that is, again, Kali Rising, Intimations of a Mystical Hedonist. And John Lash is the only scholar of comparative mythology so far known to have written a classical myth, giving it a different outcome in Orpheus and Eurydice. His published works are The Seeker's Handbook, Twins and the Double, The Hero, Manhood and Power, Quest for the Zodiac, and his latest book, Not in His Image. John, thank you so much for joining us today. So appreciate that. Are you here with us?
It's a pleasure to be here.
And what we're going to be doing today, John, is delving deeper into the information about the Archons and how it's been told via the Gnostics, specifically information found in the Nag Hammadi Library. And with that in mind, of course, I would like for you to talk a little bit about your writings and what you found with the Gnostics and the mysteries.
Well, the Gnostics are a fascinating subject in human history. And I believe that if one looks honestly into that subject and does the research correctly, you cannot fail to draw a number of startling conclusions. One of them is simply that Gnosticism stands out uniquely as an explanation of the human condition. It has a unique cosmology describing the existence of the Earth and why the Earth exists and the origin of the human species, plus the explanation of those extraterrestrial parasites called Archons. And all in all, it appears, and I think this is a fair assessment, not just my personal bias, but I believe this is a fair assessment based on the materials, that Gnosticism tells humanity, it has a message for humanity that is unique, that points toward a solution, and that contains many, many elements that are not found in other religious and metaphysical systems, elements that address the burning issues of today.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, and specifically, what are the Archons, for example, from the Gnostic perspective? What exactly do they say these are?
Well, they say that they are what people today who use that term generally assume. You know, the term has come into usage, as you know, widely over the last 10 years. And I guess I could say fairly, without appearing to be arrogant, that I'm the person who introduced the term Archon into the global conversation. And now it is widely used, and a fair number of the people who use it know about me or may refer to the Gnostic writings from which that word derives, and a great many others just use it. So what is the general accepted connotation of the word Archon now? Well, it means some kind of extraterrestrial entity that is of a cyborg nature and that is in its behavior and mentality parasitic and predatory to the human species. Okay? I think that most people who use that term now would accept that general definition.
Yeah.
However, there are more specifics, much more specific factors in the profile of the Archon that come uniquely from the Gnostic materials. And what concerns me today, 10 or 11 years after having introduced that term into discourse, is that on many occasions now when people use that term, they're not referring back to the Gnostic source from which it comes. And that is not a good idea, because first of all, the Gnostic sources that gave us the word Archon also contain a remedy for the Archons.
Exactly.
And they explain the origin of the Archons, and they give a great deal of what I call the Gnostic intel. Okay?
Right.
Yeah, the Gnostic intel on the Archons is so important that I consider it reckless and irresponsible to bandy that term around without referring back to that intel.
Yeah. Yeah, and having the ability to obviously get the solution is critical. So definitely, and I think that Serena, you had something in reference to, you wanted to know something about that.
Yeah, John had just mentioned the word cyborg, and I just wanted to make it clear if he considers the cyborg, as the Nag Hammadi do use the word automata. Is this an artificial intelligence? Would he consider them an artificial intelligence?
Yeah, this is an artificial intelligence, absolutely. And here we are in the 21st century. Already sometime after the middle of the 20th century, humanity at large came slowly to the realization that there is this something called artificial intelligence. How did that happen? Well, of course, it happened with the rise of IT and computer technology, didn't it?
Yeah.
And so currently, almost everyone in the world, certainly everyone in the Western world, has had their hands on a computer, an iPhone. They're using artificial intelligence. But what goes a step further than that is the Gnostic intel that informs us that the artificial intelligence of the Archons is an independently existing entity. The artificial intelligence in my Mac here does not exist independent of the human species, does it?
Mm-hmm. Right.
People invented this Mac, didn't they? They designed the software. They developed the model of this device over many years.
Mm-hmm.
So I am interacting with AI, artificial intelligence, and I am using the tools provided by artificial intelligence to talk to you and to record this interview. But that is artificial intelligence that has been produced by the human mind. It's a byproduct of human intelligence. What the Gnostic profile of the Archons warns us about is that there is an independently existing species of artificial intelligence that inhabits the solar system, and that it has the tendency to prey upon humanity.
Okay, now you're saying that are they originating from our solar system, or do they come from beyond that?
Well, this is a really important point, and I thank you for bringing this up. As I just said, one of my big concerns in the usage of the term Archon is that people use it recklessly and do not refer back to the source materials. Okay, is that clear?
Yeah.
Well, this is a really important point, because the Gnostic source materials, largely Nag Hammadi, to some extent a few other sources, present a scenario. They present a narrative that describes the origin of the Archons. Now I ask you, if you are a responsibly thinking person and a truth seeker, and you're going to use the term Archon, you're going to adapt it into your vocabulary because it fits some of the insanity and deceit that we face in the world today.
Yeah.
If you're going to do that, then why wouldn't you also at least refer to the further intel that is attached to that word.
Sure.
You see? So, I'll give you the further intel. According to the Gnostic creation myth, if you want to call it that, I call it the fallen goddess scenario, the myth of the goddess Sophia. According to this massive cosmological scenario, the Archons are an alien species that was created by accident before the Earth came to exist. And as a matter of fact, in the Gnostic cosmology, they say that there's a very famous line. It's found in the Gospel of Philip. It's probably one of the most quoted and baffling lines in the Nag Hammadi material. The world system that you inhabit came about by a mistake. That's a pretty remarkable statement, isn't it?
Yeah, sure is.
I mean, if that doesn't get your attention...
Oh, big time. Oh, yeah, big time.
Right?
Yep.
And I want to point out that the word mistake in the Greek Coptic syntax is anamu. Anamu, which is related to, you guess, anomaly. So another way you could translate it is to say, hey, look, human beings, the world system you inhabit is an anomaly.
Wow.
Now, if you don't understand what the anomaly is, then you don't know where you're at. Right?
Right.
So what is the anomaly that produced the Archons?
Good question.
Right. Well, the myth tells us that the goddess Sophia herself accidentally produced the Archons.
Oh, dear God.
This is what it says. I'm not making this up.
Oh, my goodness.
By the way, to those who already know me well will know that I'm not making this up, or if there is any aspect of the Gnostic scenario that I have elaborated or extrapolated, I will tell you so. Otherwise, you can count on the fact that I am drawing directly from the material that survives, okay? I am rigorously following this because I know that I am often open to the accusation or suspicion that John Lash is just inventing all this, okay?
Right.
I'm not. This is not a channeled scenario. This is not my private narcissistic fiction. Okay?
Yeah.
So what the Gnostics said, I'll give it to you in 2 minutes. They said that at the core of our galaxy is where the gods live. And they called these gods the Aeons. And they said that these gods live in the hub or core of our galaxy, and they invent for their own entertainment experiments. But the experiments that they invent or design do not unfold in the galactic core. They unfold in the many planetary worlds that arise in the limbs of the galaxy. You know, of course, we inhabit a 4 or 5 armed lenticular spiral galaxy.
Yes.
Okay, so you have that picture.
Yes.
Right. Well, that's the setting of Gnostic mythology. That's the setting of the fallen goddess scenario. It doesn't describe the entire universe. It talks about the galaxy we live in, our home galaxy. It's a star myth regarding our home galaxy. And they said, among these gods who are in the core, hub of the galaxy, who are like vast currents of living light, vast currents of living luminosity, who are alive, but not in an anthropomorphic form, nor even in an angelic form. They're more like in a serpentine form. They're like great torrents or serpents of light. That they are alive and that they are love to create experiments. And that they seed these experiments in the worlds that arise in the galactic limbs. But normally they themselves don't go into those worlds.
Right.
They remain, as it were, in the observation booth of the galactic hub. Well, what happened with the Aeon Sophia, to make a long story short, is that she and another god, or Aeon, called Thelete, working together, and the gods often work in a tantric...
Hello? Oh, I think we lost John. Hold on 1 second. Okay, I think we just lost John. We're going to try to get him right back. Let's give this a shot here. Just 1 moment.
And they
Okay.
calibrated into the nucleic acid a lot of different qualities and talents.
And John, could you go back like maybe a couple of sentences before, only because I lost you for 2 seconds there, and
I know.
Yeah.
Okay, and also I'm hearing an echo of my own voice now very strongly.
Oh my goodness.
Since I started to talk about this experiment.
There you go.
So yeah, there you go. So where do we have to go back and pick up?
You were talking about the experiment, about how they happen in the arms, and
right.
And then we lost Serena, and then I lost you.
Oh wow! Are you both back?
We're both back.
Okay. Okay, I'm just going to pick it up from there.
Okay.
Okay. The Gnostic mythology of our world says that the gods at the center of the galaxy create experiments. They design experiments. And 2 gods in particular, Sophia and Thelete, designed the experiment of the human animal, the human creature, called the anthropos. And once they had calibrated and designed that creature by, as it were, investing certain qualities into a sort of plasm, sort of a plasm of nucleic acid.
Right.
Right? They coded the human genome in the galactic center.
Huh.
And then they projected it outward into the limbs of the galaxy so that it could seed itself in various worlds. And then they could watch what happened. This is the Gnostic scenario of world creation. But there's an anomaly. Let's get back to that line. What is the anomaly in the experiment with the anthropos?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it so happens that the Aeon Sophia, the goddess who was involved in designing the human species, is said to have been a young Aeon. And she was impetuous. She was outrageous, in fact. She had a lot of passion, and she felt a tremendous empathy and curiosity for the experiments that would unfold with this new species called humanity. And she became so fascinated with the idea of the anthropos that her desire to see it realize itself, her desire to see humanity fulfill its full divine potential, pulled her out of the pleromic company at the center of the galaxy. This is called the plunge or fall of the wisdom goddess. And it pulled her out into the region of the galactic limbs. You can imagine that event as a huge spiking of pure white luminosity from the galactic center outward toward the periphery of the galactic arms. Can you picture that?
Mm-hmm, sure.
Well, as a matter of fact, there is scientific proof that such a spiking actually occurred.
Wow.
Some years ago, not too long ago, 5 or 6, scientists found a curious kind of a tunnel in space that proceeded from the galactic center out to the 3rd galactic arm where we are located presently.
Well, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Yep. Totally.
And they said, well, what is this? It looks like something went through there, but there's nothing left there. Sort of like the exhaust of a Formula One car.
Uh-huh.
The car is gone, but like there's an exhaust trail hanging on the road.
Uh-huh.
That's what they actually found. I mean, that is actual astronomical confirmation of this myth. So anyway, now we get to the Archons and the anomaly. The Gnostics taught that normally an aeon, which is a massive torrent of pure luminosity and life and love and generosity and wisdom and playfulness, doesn't go outside the boundary of the galactic core. There's a definite boundary between the pleroma, which is the core of the galaxy, and the kanoma, which is the realm of the galactic arms. They don't go out for one particular reason, is because they don't like to go and interfere with the experiments that they've set up. They are more interested in seeing how an experiment will unfold without their interference.
Exactly.
That's what makes it interesting to them. And also, they respect freedom. They respect the freedom of the creatures in these experiments that they set in motion, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Thus, for the Aeon Sophia to massively plunge, like a massive power spiking, out of the galactic core and into the arms produced a huge disturbance in the galactic arms. That does not normally happen. That is the anamu. That is the mistake, if you want to translate a mistake, as scholars do. But more properly, more literally, that is the anomaly.
Yeah.
And as a result of the impact of her ionic luminosity upon the dense matter that is floating in the galactic limbs, she spontaneously produced this cybernetic alien species, the Archons, who are kind of like locusts or insects. They are inorganic and they have a mercury silicon-based organism rather than a carbohydrate organism like organic creatures like us. Is that a clear picture?
Yeah, sure is.
Okay, now let me add the final note here. When I restored the fallen goddess scenario, and I put in this chapter, and I just wrote it as I had found it in the documents, I reconstructed it. I thought, nobody's ever going to believe this. This is so weird. I mean, how could just a current of this divine force impacting like a field of dust, because that's what the galactic arms are. They're huge fields of atomic matter and dust and elementary particles with planetary worlds floating in them, right? With planets, right?
Yep.
How is this possible? I mean, there wasn't even a place for the Archons to live. How could they just have been produced by this?
Yeah.
But I put it in the story because I honor the investigations of the Gnostics. Everything I've done has proven them to be, to verify them has proven correct. Well, some years later, I read about the Akari insects. Have you ever heard about them?
No, I personally haven't.
Acari. You want to go and research, go into Google and write the abiogenesis. That's ABIOGENESIS. Abiogenesis of Akari insects. And you will come up with the most amazing document. This is a document that was published by the British Royal Society of Science in London, I think around 1840. And it records the experiment of a certain person who used electricity to spontaneously produce insects.
Wow.
That's right. What he did was he had a plate of metal filings, which is an analogy to the pulverized material that is floating in the galactic arms, okay? And he directed an electric current upon it. And he produced actual mites.
Wow.
Tiny little mites spontaneously from electricity. And that is called abiogenesis because, like the generation of the Archons, it is a spontaneous generation without organic life. It is abiotic.
That is crazy. Amazing.
That is the amazing story. I'm not making anything up.
Yeah.
Of what the Gnostics found when they investigated with their faculties of paranormal perception and their shamanic abilities for heightened perception. When they investigated the history of our world, of this planet, they found out that the Earth goddess, even before the Earth existed, accidentally produced a massive horde of parasitic entities.
Oh my goodness. Very, very similar, John, to the people. There's a lot of people that are suffering now from Morgellons that
That's right.
Yeah, that are producing these insects inside of them.
That's right.
And you kind of wonder how that is. Well, this is a great example right here.
Well, you could say in a way there are a number of things in that at top of the list.
On top of everything, sure.
Phenomena
Yep.
that indicate that in a sense humanity is unconsciously reliving this event.
Yep.
But we don't want to unconsciously relive this event. That's not a good idea, What we want to do is get our minds open to the cosmic perspective that is presented in the Gnostic scenario, because it really tells us how the Archons came to be. You cannot find anywhere else that I know of an explanation of the origin of the Archons that matches this and that is verifiable and makes sense, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. That's amazing information. Now is based on these Archons also have the ability to do all kinds of things here on Earth, and also get into people's minds. Is that pretty? Do you agree with that, or I mean, what is the purpose of them now here? I mean, why are they functioning here? What drives them at this point?
Well, that's a huge question, and I would suggest that we approach that question first of all by remaining in the framework of the narrative. Okay?
Right.
The narrative of the emergence of the Earth, the fall of the goddess of fire, the origin of the Archons. It's a story.
Yep.
And you have to stick to the story, because the story is a powerful guide to imagination and also to reason. And within the story, you can approach this inscrutable and supernatural problem facing humanity in a sober and reasonable way. But if you go outside the story and just speculate and invent things, you lose it. So I'm going to stay inside the story and explain what happened next.
Okay.
Sophia found herself, as Aeons rarely do, outside of the company from the other galactic Aeons, and she was alienated and separated from the gods. And this is a big part of the story of the goddess Sophia. Now, all this happened even before the Earth was formed. The Earth hasn't been formed yet.
Wow.
So what she did was, I mean, this may sound funny, but it's an accurate paraphrase. She's really annoyed by this locust-like horde. It's like if you were taking a walk in the park and suddenly there's a huge horde of locusts flying around you. You know? So she, being a goddess, still had divine power. So she said, well, I can see that they're kind of mindless. They're cyborgs. They're inorganic, but they are capable of certain functions. So I think I'll give them something to do to keep them out of my hair. Because I got to figure out what I'm going to do out here now that I'm stranded out here in the galactic limbs, and I can't figure it with these creatures in my face. And so what she did was that she projected into the horde mentality, they have a kind of horde mentality of the Archons, a bit of her own divine intelligence, giving them enough intelligence to construct a world for themselves, a kind of Disney world or playground where they could distract themselves. That's what the solar system is.
Interesting.
They inhabit the solar system. According to the Gnostic intel, strictly speaking, you don't have to speculate about where the Archons come from. They do not come from another star system. They do not come from another galaxy. They are confined to our solar system. And so she allowed them to construct the solar system, and they are the creators of the solar system, exclusive of three parts. They did not create the sun, or the moon, or the earth, but they created the other planets and the other elements in the solar system. And that is their playground. It's called, in the Gnostic syntax of Nag Hammadi, a stereoma. And what stereoma means is that it is like a virtual reality world.
Wow.
Now, another thing that's outstanding and remarkable about the Gnostic cosmology is it says that the Earth that we inhabit, it's an organic world, it's a superorganism itself, and all of it is alive, nature's alive, there are millions of species of creatures living on the Earth, and this planet Earth doesn't belong to the solar system.
Okay.
It's captured in it.
Huh.
That's right.
So where was the Earth prior to being captured here?
The Earth arose through the metamorphosis of the body of Sophia herself. She turned into this planet.
Gotcha. And
when she turned into this planet, it so happened that the Disney World planet, I call it, the Disney theme park of the Archons, all right?
Yeah.
Which is what we call the inorganic planetary system, Mars, Jupiter, Venus, and so forth, and Saturn, pre-existed her turning into the Earth. Did you get that picture?
Mm-hmm.
And then when she herself turned into the Earth, when she materialized into the Earth, which she is today, still, the material body of the Earth is her body, that organic planet came to be captured and held in the inorganic system.
Wow.
That is the setting of humanity's problem with the Archons.
Huh.
That's the picture.
Wow.
Now, from that picture, staying with that picture, you can ask now some reasonable questions, and you can proceed to some reasonable answers.
Mm-hmm.
But you can say, well, what's their, just like you asked me a minute ago, right? What's their intention? What's their agenda? What do they do?
Yep.
How do they intrude? Well, the Gnostic intel is pretty clear on the fact that these Archons, these inorganic cyborgs, ETs, cannot inhabit the Earth. And so the idea that they're going to come and take over the Earth is not correct. They cannot inhabit the Earth because it's an organic world and they're inorganic. Besides, oxygen is toxic to them for long periods of time, short periods of time. That explains why archontic creatures like the gray ETs and so forth, people are saying, well, why don't they land on the White House and, and this kind of thing.
Right.
They can't be in the atmosphere of the Earth for very long, just like a deep sea diver.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Could not be at the bottom of the ocean for more than a few minutes.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
So, they're very exasperated because they envy our world, and the Gnostics use this term explicitly, phonos. P-H-T-H-O-N-O-S. Pathonos in Greek means envy. And they said that the Archons are dangerous to humanity because they see that we were created by a divine imagination in the galactic center, and they're just a result of an accident.
Right, yeah.
And they don't like that. And they also envy us. They envy the beauty and innocence and creativity and playfulness of the human creature.
Mm-hmm.
Now you begin to get a sense of their agenda. What do people do, even human animals, what do they do when there is something that they envy, but they can't have it? What's the satisfaction that they can get?
Well, they'll try to take it away from the other person, or they just make sure that thing is destroyed so that, nobody has it.
So that nobody has
Right,
it.
right.
That's right.
Yeah.
So their agenda, if you want to say they have one, is that through their envy, they want really to undermine and destroy our world so that we don't have the beauty and potential that the aeons have invested in us to make a living paradise on this planet. But they cannot come in and take over the planet. If they so modified the atmosphere of the Earth by dropping the level of oxygen to, say, 10%,
right,
so that they could possibly spend longer time on the Earth, they would destroy everything on the Earth. It would be a wasteland. They would be like locusts flying around in a field that had been eaten down to the dirt.
right.
But this is what they're like. They're senseless. It says specifically in the second treatise of the Great Seth, which is an important Nag Hammadi text, that the plan of the Archons is senselessness. It's absurd destruction.
Huh. So they would be capable of actually getting it to that point where it's totally, a wasteland? Is that the whole thing, or do they want to keep it to the point?
They would be capable of getting us to get it to that point.
Gotcha.
Which they're doing a damn fine job of, if you ask me.
Yep.
Now you have to say, well, okay, if they can't come and invade us and attack us, like happens in the War of the Worlds or some Hollywood movie, how can they reach us? Oh, they can reach us, okay. They can reach us in a couple of ways, which are really devastating. I'll name the three main ways that they reach us. First way is that they can reach us through remote viewing.
Huh.
And I have to tell you that there's a lot of them.
Yeah.
What is there? How many people are on Earth today?
Gosh. What, over
7 billion?
7 to 8? I don't know, something like that.
Right. There could be 700 billion Archons.
Yeah, exactly.
In the solar
A lot
system.
of people don't know that. They don't think about that, but the numbers are greater.
Right. And suppose that they work in teams, because they can't work individually. They work on a hive mentality.
Yeah.
If you have a team of 100 or 1,000 Archons remote viewing on you, you're going to feel it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Why do they remote view on human beings? Because that is their method of telepathic intrusion into the human mind. They are actually mind parasites.
Exactly.
So that's one of the great dangers, is telepathic intrusion from the Archons. The second great danger is that they have a skill that is invested in them that is their highest attribute or their highest capacity. And in the Gnostic Coptic writings, it's designated by the word Hal, H-A-L, which means simulation or virtual reality. They can project from outside the atmosphere of the Earth into the atmosphere virtual reality scenarios that are so real that human beings will mistake them for real events.
Interesting. Similar to The Matrix, the movie, huh?
Similar to The Matrix, similar also to E.T. abductions.
Mm-hmm.
There are many explanations for E.T. abductions, as you know.
Yeah.
A good part of them are that the E.T. abduction thing is just a screen for military black ops operations. You know that, of course. Okay? But let's say that there's a certain percentage of E.T. abductions and close encounters that actually do involve these archonic entities. How do they do that? They do that by producing a virtual reality simulation. Just like today, you know, Sony and these other big companies, global companies that are into AI, say, oh, you don't have to go to Bermuda for your vacation, we'll sell you a package. And you can sit in a special lounge chair in your living room in front of a screen, and we'll hook you up with our program, and you will be in a virtual reality vacation in Bermuda, right?
Right.
That's like the holodeck from Star Trek, right?
That's right. That's right. Well, if human technology has reached a point where we are at the verge of wanting to offer this, which is absolutely insane and ridiculous, of course, just imagine what the Archons can do.
Exactly.
And they are also behind a lot of IT. They're behind video games. They're behind drones. They're behind remote control, drone warfare. All of these types of behavior, which are murderous to our world, are deviant forms of behavior that human animals are enacting because they have been infected by the Archon mind.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah.
Finally, there's a third weapon that they use. And the Gnostics probably lost their lives for what I'm going to tell you right now. The Nag Hammadi documents, as pathetic and meager as they are, contain a very clear warning to humanity. And that warning is that the archonic parasites will infiltrate and try to control humanity through religion. And they specifically designated the religion of what I call salvationism, of Judeo-Christianity, Abrahamic religion.
Wow.
And they said that this Abrahamic religion, which contains 4 elements, and they're all lies, by the way, but these are the 4 components of what I call the Palestinian Redeemer complex in my book, not in his image. These are the 4 elements of Abrahamic religion. 1, exclusive creation of the world by a paternal father God. No female power involved. That's a lie.
Of course.
The world was not created by a father God. The world wasn't created at all. The world is a metamorphosis of the divine Sophia herself.
Yep.
Okay? But patriarchy or patriarchal religion says no. Divine Father God created the world. 2, he has chosen certain people to represent him on earth and selected them and separated them from all others. That's another lie. Dangerous, dangerous lie, as you know.
Yep.
3, he is going to send his Messiah to help the chosen people implement his final program for humanity. And 4, he plans a hilarious apocalyptic judgment day for everyone, including those who follow his plan and obey his orders, and those who don't.
Right. Hilarious apocalyptic, right?
Right.
Yeah.
This is the great lie of patriarchal Abrahamic religion. Mm-hmm. And note that in this scenario, in this belief system, the Supreme Father God, who's attributed as the creator of humanity and of the world, has a plan. He has a divine plan, and he's got it worked out from soup to nuts.
Yeah.
Okay?
Right.
He's got it worked out. He knows the beginning, the middle, and the end. And the Gnostics warned that this belief system, which originated in its current toxic pathology from a tiny sect of the ancient Hebrews called the Zadokim, this belief system is the primary instrument that the Archons will use to destroy the human race. Now, if that's not a message worth paying attention to,
really?
I honestly don't know what is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It is definitely worth paying attention to. I have to say that is huge. And if I may, I have a couple of questions at this point. On some of the points that you have already made, I want to go back a little bit. From soup to nuts, actually. That is hysterical. I really want to laugh loud. From soup to nuts. Okay, now, when you say that, it occurs to me the scenario that we have living here on this planet in this density, from reincarnation to the life that we have here, to passing over and having what a lot of people refer to as a life review. I would say that the Archons have all of that covered as well. The reincarnation cycle, our life here, and what they call a life review, which inevitably sends you back into this reality here again. This is what I see when you say the words soup to nuts. What do you think about that?
Well, you raise an interesting question, you know. I haven't... Actually, I've been investigating those particular subjects lately, and I wouldn't want to speak prematurely about reincarnation and so forth. I would just say that I concur with your view in this respect. Once the Archons, operating telepathically and operating as intra-psychic parasites, get into the human mind, they are going to want to take over every aspect of human reality and destroy it and make us become like them, turn us into mindless zombies like them. So they are going to, in fact, suck out all the real and genuine content of the human soul life.
Right.
And so it makes sense to me that they would hijack or appropriate everything they can.
Yes.
And so that they would try to appropriate even the experience of death and the after-death process, whatever it may be, makes perfect sense to me. Because one of the things that the cosmological texts say about the Archons is that they are a species that does not observe boundaries. They know no limits. And that way they're similar to psychopaths.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it's beyond human comprehension to understand how far these creatures go.
That's right, except that we have the story.
Right.
It is unimaginably weird. It's like science fiction. And in fact, people have observed, religious scholars have said, hey, wait a minute. This Gnosticism is like, it's a religion, but it's more like science fiction, you know. But we can understand who the Archons are, how they originated, and how to deal with them if you stay in the story. You have to stay in the framework of the narrative. The narrative itself is a teaching device that allows you to come to terms with what it tells you. That's a really important point. In fact, that's one of the most important points I tried to get across as a teacher of the Gnostic message. Okay?
Right. Thank you. Thank you for saying that, because it's my feeling that Gnosticism is the way of the truth. And a lot of people are referring to it as a religion. I don't see it as a religion. I see Gnosticism as the path to the truth without obstacle. When the divine human being with soul encounters their own soul and accesses truth through there. And if you are going to refer to it as a religion, then I would say truth is the religion of Gnosticism. That's my personal feeling about that.
Right. Or to quote Madame Blavatsky, who claimed to be a Gnostic, there is no religion higher than truth. You know?
Oh, there you go. Well, somebody has already said it. Now, my other question is referring to staying within the framework of this story.
Right.
You referred to the mistake that was made. What do you say to people who believe that there is only one God and God does not make mistakes, and God created the Archons and all the psychopaths and all the demons and everything that is going on here, and it's all, it's all good, and it's all a lesson, and there are no mistakes, and we're here to live all of this, and this is normal and natural, and everything is in divine order. What do you say about that?
Well, I could say a number of things.
Yeah, I bet you could.
Oh, gosh.
I guess the first thing that I would say is that, dear sir or madam, your mental sickness has stunted your intelligence to the point that it may not be recoverable. That's basically what I'd say. Because if anybody, just let's put it down on a simple level of human beings, or as I prefer to say, human animals, human creatures living together, anybody who thinks that all is well on this planet and going according to God's plan maybe needs to go to another planet.
Yes.
Because that is so obviously untrue.
Yeah.
And I hold the opinion that as long as there is one human person suffering, or even one animal suffering at the hands of another, and as long as there is deceit and evil being perpetrated, then no one can be happy on this planet. We're all meant to be happy together and to thrive. That's my conception of the goddess's plan.
Thank you.
Well said, John. Unbelievable. Thank you for expressing that. Amazing. I mean, that is my posture. I know it's Serena's posture, and we try very, very hard to bring that forth, that kind of concept forth, and to have you express it as well is such a confirmation. Thank you very much for doing that. I have a question also with reference to the whole story, and it's just out of curiosity, where the Gnostics actually got this information from, if you even have any reference to that. How were they so connected that they were actually able to get this information and then actually write it down, of course? Do you know the origins of this information?
Sure.
That's a great question, Ari. That's a great question. Go ahead.
Sure. I know the origins of this information. I go to those origins myself.
Awesome.
The Gnostics, I've said this many times before, but for those who are maybe hearing for the first time would be amused by this. The word Gnostikos is a Greek word, meaning someone who knows. Gnostikoi is the plural. And what very few Gnostic scholars will tell you is that word is an insult. And when that word was used back in the early Christian centuries, it meant smartass or know-it-all. And it was used by the enemies of the Gnostics, that is to say the early Christian fathers and the ideologues who laid the foundation for Christianity, that is to say this horrific pathological belief system of sin and guilt and torture and the Messiah and the chosen people, you know. The proponents of that belief system in the early Christian centuries encountered some of these people. I'm going to tell you what their real name was in a moment, and found that these people that they talked to were pagan intellectuals, let's say, and spiritual people of the pagan world knew a hell of a lot of stuff. Mm-hmm. And they knew it. It wasn't just that they believed it, they knew it, and they had tested it, and they could confirm it, and they could defeat the Christian propagandists at every argument. And so the Christian propagandists presented them, called them Gnosticos, smart-ass know-it-alls. But they called themselves teleste, meaning we who are aimed. It's a word from the Greek telos, or telos, T-E-L-O-S, which means aim, purpose, objective. Okay? Mm-hmm. So someone who has a name, who follows an aim, and who is aimed, is called a telestes, or a teleste. They called themselves that because that was the name they used in the pagan mysteries. Mm-hmm. The source of all their knowledge was what they did in the mysteries, in the mystery schools. That was the source of their knowledge. However, I might add that those who were initiated into the pagan mysteries took a vow of silence, not secrecy. Please make this distinction. They took a vow of silence, that they would not speak openly in public about how they experienced and accessed the source of their knowledge. Did you know that?
I had no idea.
Yes.
Interesting.
And for that reason, today, you can go and research it. If you read scholars who have specialized in the pagan mysteries, such as Walter Burkert or George Milanos, who wrote about the Eleusinian mysteries, and others, you will find that they say, well, this is amazing. We have these things called the mysteries, the pagan mystery schools. They are by far the most widespread, influential, and interesting institutions of the ancient world. Great institutions of spirituality. And yet, when we want to know what went on inside the walls of those institutions, we have no record because those people maintained a vow of silence. Well, this presents a really interesting problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Question is, how can we find out what the Gnostics or the teleste were able to do in consciousness and in their inquiry for knowledge that allowed them to access these truths about our world? What were they able to do? And how would we know that? The only way that could be known today is by reproducing what they did.
Yep.
Do you see the sense of that?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And this is what I've done, and what I have been dedicated to teaching to the world for 10 or 15 years now.
Fantastic.
The ultimate method of the Gnostic schools of the mysteries was called the divine mathesis. And that was done by encountering a certain light. Instruction by the light. This is the term. And actually, even though it was forbidden to speak openly about instruction by the light, there are actually some tiny fragments and threads of written evidence about it, and I've quoted them in Not in His Image. So there were a few leaks, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But generally speaking, what they did not explain is that when they underwent an initiation experience in the inner sanctum of the mysteries, they were brought by the veteran teachers and hierophants into the presence of a certain light. And this light is actually the body of the goddess.
Wow.
And when you're in the presence of that light, you are in the presence of her naked body, as it were. Her clothed body, her body of flesh, is the planet itself.
Sure.
But she has, in fact, two bodies. She has the planetary material body that she assumed when she metamorphosed into the Earth, according to this strange scenario of her plunge. But because she's an aeon, because she is a massive torrent of living luminosity that originates from the galactic core, all of her luminosity did not disappear into materialization. Can you conceive that?
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
A part of her luminosity remains totally free of materialization,
Mm-hmm.
And yet it is also material. It is a material light.
Mm-hmm.
And the Gnostics knew how to encounter this light over and over again. And in the presence of this light, they practiced what I call telestic shamanism. That is to say, they went into a cognitive trance, a cognitive ecstasy, because you go into ecstasy in the presence of this light, spontaneously.
Mm-hmm.
And in that state of ecstasy, they had a heightened knowing. And they brought questions to the light. And they learned directly from the light itself, from the instruction by the light. This is the method of instruction in the ancient mysteries that was never, ever disclosed publicly until I wrote my book, which came out in 2006.
Wow. Totally amazing. Totally explains it, of course.
It not only explains it, but it opens the door.
Yeah.
It's like saying, no matter what you think of what I'm saying right now, whoever's listening, no matter what you think, I'm saying that there's an option here.
Mm-hmm.
And so before you dismiss me or think this is too weird or get freaked out by what I'm saying, just consider that you have an option. Would you like to have this experience?
Yeah.
And why would you like to have it? And what would you do and what would you ask if you had this experience? You see? So it really is a tremendous opening to the truth-seeking spirit of humanity, that we now know this, and that the information, that the secret of the mysteries has come back to humanity.
Unbelievable. That's phenomenal. Because that is definitely, that connection is just so vital right now. People have lost their way. Again, with the false religions and everything. So this would be obviously an answer, or the answer.
This is direct access to source.
Yep.
See, when I speak in Gnostic language of direct access to source, it's not an abstraction.
Yeah.
It's not a loose expression. The source is the organic light. The organic light is the living, luminous presence of this Aeon Sophia within this world. And she is there to be reached by those human individuals who wish to reach her.
Exactly. Well said again. And I just would like to expand on that point right there.
Sure.
Why we see on this planet such a patriarchal domination, and in many parts of the world, many parts of the world, there is still a misogyny that exists against the feminine that is unexplained and unexplainable even by those who possess this misogyny. But obviously, because it's been since the beginning, this hatred of the feminine, we can understand that there is something very deep and dark and visceral and ancient about it. And anybody who talks about reconnecting with the feminine, with the goddess, with Mother Earth, or loving Mother Earth and the woman, is they're isolated. They're how do you say? They're put on the fringe of society. They're demonized. They're vilified. And this is the whole archontic patriarchal meme that is all over this planet since the beginning of time. But I have a question, and I do feel personally that is the way to connect to your personal light, if you possess it, is to connect to that divine feminine mother. And there is a point here that I wanted to get into. Speaking of accessing the divine light directly,
Sure.
there are a lot of people who feel that we need authority. There are a lot of people who feel we need governments. Well, how do we do this? How do we self-authorize? How do we live as self-autonomous beings, as sovereign beings who do not need authority? There are a lot of people who feel that they need authority and governments, etc., and they can't imagine a world without it.
That's right. And they welcome the enslavement that comes through that need, don't they?
Yes. This is my point. Because so many people cannot imagine how living based on your own integrity, based on your own sovereign internal power, with your own light, directed by this light that is the Mother Goddess to me.
Right.
They can't imagine that, and I think that there is a disconnect. And I think those people who can't imagine that are people who possibly do not possess this light inside, and who are part of this archontic matrix itself, who are the agents of this matrix, and who thrive in it, and they can't specifically have this connection. And there's another population that does possess this light, and they can imagine this sovereign power.
Well, that's a vivid characterization. I think that's an excellent characterization. The way that you've described it, and the way you've described the members of the human species who have, as it were, taken sides, due to the brutal and long-term mind programming of patriarchy.
Yes, a violent one.
Yeah, a violent one. Let me go back to the history of the Gnostics for a moment, because it relates very closely to the scenario you just described, and then we can flip back again to the present. When the Gnostics came out, it was their habit to work in anonymity. That's why the names of very few Gnostics are known. And they taught the arts and the sciences, and they were the educators of the ancient world based on their intimate access to the goddess herself. But they didn't talk about that outwardly. They just turned out to the world and gave to the world the bounty that they received from the goddess. And when the time came that Christianity began to arise, they did come out, because they were very alarmed about the appearance of this salvationist religion and the chosen race idea and the Messiah idea. And when they came out to argue with Christianity, as I said, to argue with the patriarchs and everything, they got a very violent reaction, For instance, my book begins with the murder of Hypatia.
Oh yeah, that's horrific.
Yeah, who was a pagan intellectual and a Gnostic in her own right. And the murder of Hypatia is one example of the brutal and murderous opposition to the Gnostic message. And if you go back and you research this story and look at the facts of history, you have to ask yourself this question. Well, okay, Christianity claims to be a message of love and peace, like do all these other murderous religions. And so what about coexistence, I mean, if Christianity, as it arose in the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd century, the message of Jesus Christ, the love of the Father God, and forgive your enemies, and all these things, if that was such a wonderful, compelling message, and it was so good for humanity, then why couldn't they let the Gnostic message about the divine Sophia and the authority of each sovereign person to connect to her, why couldn't they just let it coexist and see which one won out?
Exactly.
Okay. Right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
And they obviously couldn't let it coexist, because if humanity had been given, and if humanity today is given a fair chance to choose between one or the other, the people who are still sane enough to know what it means to be a human being will choose the Gnostic and Sophianic path. And all the rest of them will choose the other. And the reason why, to get back to your question, Serena, is because, and I explained this in my book, patriarchal religion is an authoritarian, woman-hating, goddess-hating paradigm that destroys the sovereign freedom of each individual. It destroys human conscience and replaces it by the remote control of an off-planet Father God. And that destruction of the human conscience, I'm sorry to say, has been widespread and devastating. And there are many terminal victims of it walking around this planet today who cannot reclaim sovereignty.
Exactly. There are many long-term injuries to the soul that carry back from the origins of the brutal violence of these. And speaking of these religions that would not accept Gnosticism peacefully, you can take that even much further, because their demonstration of their violence through the Inquisition and all of their acts demonstrate their insanity. Clearly.
There has never been a longer and more brutal campaign on this planet than the campaign to eliminate the Gnostic message to humanity and to eliminate the wonderful revelation that the planetary goddess is present to her children and wants to receive her children and teach them and co-evolve this planet into the natural paradise it's meant to be. More blood and more effort and more inquisitions have been executed on this planet to repress that message than any other message. And I'll tell you the problem today. The problem today wouldn't even be insurmountable if it were just a matter of the people like who've gone terminal in patriarchal religion, like the Muslims, for instance. I mean, they're completely hopeless into a belief system of absolute abjugation, absolute abject submission to the authority of the Father, right? That wouldn't be so bad if they would just let the people dedicated to the goddess coexist. I don't care. They can go have their imams and they can go have their submission to the Father God. Just leave me alone.
Right.
But you see, there's no coexistence for these people.
No.
That's the problem.
Yes, they developed an army. They developed mercenaries. They developed burning by the stake. They developed what they call the Pope's pears. Have you ever seen those things? And torture devices in chambers for those people who could not recite things from the Bible. And this is absolute sickness and insanity. And
that's right. And we're at the terminal point of this insanity. And the question is, well, where is it going to go? I mean, I'd like to say we're a little bit past the halfway point of this talk. I hope that we can shift.
This is a great time.
Solution here,
great time to do that right now, John. Absolutely.
Because I don't want to be another one of those internet interviewees that's just harping and harping and harping on the problem.
Yep. No,
and I know that's not your orientation either.
At all. So what do you think is the solution to this situation that we're facing?
Well, I think that the first step toward the solution is the same for everyone. We come to the solution one person at a time, okay? And then maybe there can be a couple of people. It can build in communities, it can build into cells, and it can grow. But we come to the solution one person at a time. So how do we come to that solution? You spoke a while ago in one of your talks about humanity having been duped, right?
Yep.
And about all the lies that were told, right?
Yep.
And so that's, of course, a subject that everyone discusses when you start to wake up to what's happening in the world. For instance, we're duped about 9/11, right?
Yeah.
We're told about a big lie about the war on terrorism. That's a big lie. It's a pretext to take away people's freedoms and to keep them enslaved in fear. Fear, by the way, is a medium that the Archons thrive in.
Yep.
It's their juice. It's their Gatorade, you know,
right.
fear.
Yeah.
Right. And so we could list 1,000. We could spend the rest of this time listing 1,000 different things that we've been lied to about. And it's overwhelming and oppressive to face all these lies. But I want to suggest that there is one lie that if you could overcome that lie, it would empower you to start to overcome all of the other lies as well. And this is a really important point I want to make now, so I hope I state this correctly. Just consider all the lies you've been told in your life about different things, okay? 9/11 or GMO foods or whatever. Now consider that there is one lie, a supreme lie, that you've been told, which is about humanity itself. It's a lie about humanity. Okay?
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah. If you could, it's sort of like the keystone of the whole arch of lies, okay? It's the keystone, is the lie about humanity. And if you take out the keystone, all the other lies start to collapse. Can you see where I'm going here?
Yeah.
Yes.
So what is that lie about humanity? Well, I'll tell you what it is. It's the lie that says, oh, well, we can't really ultimately know what we're doing on this planet. And we can't even really ultimately know how this planet came to be in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
Now we know that religion has stuffed our minds with a lot of fraudulent answers.
Mm-hmm.
We reject the answers of religion. Now we know that science equally has stuffed our minds and educated us with a lot of erroneous and fraudulent answers and lies. So we reject the explanation of science. Science can't tell us why we're here. Religion can't tell us why we're here. Oh, shit. I guess nobody can tell us why we're here. Right?
Right.
That's a big lie.
Yeah.
We can actually know why we're here, but I have to tell you, my friends, and this is a difficult thing to swallow, that there is only one answer to why we're here.
I'm at the edge of my seat, John.
There's only one answer. There can only be one answer that is the true answer of what we're doing on this planet. Do you get that? If it's the true answer, there can only be one.
Exactly.
There cannot be 6 true answers.
Right.
Exactly.
You know?
Right.
There can be a lot of facets of truth around that answer. I like to use this analogy. Suppose that a community of 500 people got on a boat and went on a journey, and they were going to sail to a distant land, and that boat crashed on the rocks, and they ended up shipwrecked on an island. All 500 of these people survived this boat. And then there's 1 generation, 2 generations, 3 generations, 4 generations go by, and the people living on the island, they adapt to living on the island, but they forget that there was ever an original journey with 500 people on it that had a destination and a purpose. They forget that.
Mm-hmm.
And so by the time you get to the 10th generation of these people who descended from the people shipwrecked on the island, you're going to find people like today saying, oh, well, we can't ultimately know, and what John Lash is saying is just another belief system, you know, and it's no better than Madame Blavatsky or Edgar Cayce, you know. We can't really know. And they're like the people on the island after 10 generations, right? But you see, I'm like somebody who comes to that island with the story about the original voyage. And I come to that island not because it's me, John Lash, but because I have the intel from those sources which are unique on this planet and which are the sources that have been subject to the most suppression and destruction of any message in the world. And I ask you to wonder why that would be so. Mm-hmm. That alone raises the Gnostic intel to a unique highlight in my mind.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You see what I'm saying?
Sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So the first lie that we have to overcome is the lie that we cannot ultimately know, that we cannot ultimately be Gnostikoi. Not those who believe, not those who suppose, not those who fantasize, but those who actually know.
No, yes.
And that we can test that knowing and confirm that knowing by going to the source, which is not only the source of this planet, but is the source of the divine experiment taking place on this planet. And so what I have done since I got the term of Gaia Awakening in summer of 2008, 5 years ago, is I have, as a teacher and proponent of the Gnostic message, introduced this metaphor of the divine experiment. And I think this metaphor is tremendously helpful in opening the door to the solution for humanity today. There is no plan with a beginning and middle and end, and an omniscient God overseeing the plan. That's also a lie. The gods, the aeons of the Pyramic Center, they're not omniscient. They don't know how an experiment is going to play out. They do not control the end of an experiment. They don't want to do that. Can you understand why?
Yes, well, that's what experiment means. Experiment means to see. The outcome is not, already known. It's still a mystery.
And it's a mystery. It's an adventure. It entertains them. They're cheering for the outcome.
Yep.
They want the most beautiful outcome. She wants the most beautiful outcome for us in her experiment. Start to think of it as a divine experiment. And start to say, I wonder how I can train my mind and my intelligence and my empathy and my imagination to comprehend this experiment.
Mm-hmm.
And then to participate actively in this experiment with her, with the planetary animal mother, with the Aeon Sophia. And so there is a way to do that, because she herself wants that and has released to the human world the instructions for interacting with her in the experiment in order to correct it and to turn it around. And this is the moment at which we stand. This is the moment that the Gnostics foresaw. They called it the moment of Sophia's correction. And that is an actual term from the Nag Hammadi writings. The Greek word is diorthosis, translated as correction or resolution. So the goddess herself, who fell from the galactic center, who fell into isolation and became separated from the other gods, she's been in isolation for untold eons of time, who accidentally produced the Archons, who then turned into the earth, who then found that she herself became the setting for the laboratory experiment that she had previously conceived. When she conceived the anthropos, the human genomic plasm, and sent it out as they do into like a mycelium spread into the galactic arms. When she did that from the center, she didn't know that she was going to be the planet that would be the laboratory for this experiment. Can you get your mind around that?
Yeah, that's crazy stuff right there. Wow.
This is the story, and I am not making this up.
Yeah.
I have not said so far. There are some aspects of the narrative that I am extrapolating and elaborating, because it's a living myth. We live this myth and we evolve and develop it from within. But so far, I have been strictly giving you what comes from the 1.0 version. I call it Fallen Goddess Scenario 1.0, drawn from the Gnostic materials. You have to see that your life, your individual life, and your life as a member of the human species depends on empathy with this goddess, who is the living earth, who is Gaia, who is a super organism, and she's like an animal. She doesn't have legs or ears like a deer. She doesn't have a nose like a dog or a trunk like an elephant. But the planet is an animated body. She's an animal, and you can communicate with her like you can communicate with any other animal. And this is what the Gnostics did. But you must feel empathy for her story and empathy for her situation in order to be drawn into intimacy with her.
Wow.
That is beautiful, John. Can you define empathy? Because I'm finding that many people are using the word empathy and compassion interchangeably,
Right.
and they are completely different.
Right.
Empathy runs a lot deeper. I think it is a completely different aspect than compassion entirely. And I feel it is the ability to literally feel exactly the sentience from within of this other being that is standing before you, or that you're trying to connect with, is to literally become them in all of their sentience, to acquire what is happening within them. And from this point, this also allows a person who is being empathic to understand what steps or resolution or whatever needs to take place next, that needs to take place, is through this direct sentience of acknowledging exactly what's taking place with this other being.
Well, that's quite a definition there. I think that's a pretty sophisticated definition. I like that. That's very clear. You've honed that definition well. If I might add, like a secondary component to that definition.
Sure.
What I find to be the essential component in empathy, both in regard to empathy between human creatures, human animals, and empathy with the planetary animal mother, as I call her, Pam for short. Okay? What I find to be the common factor is the biographic connection. To me, empathy is that specific form of love that manifests in a biographical connection. Give you an example of what I mean. Just think of anyone that you love, really love deeply. Isn't it true, and I think every person can verify this, that when you love someone, the story of their life is really important to you, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Exactly, yes.
Not just their life and their physical being. You want to see them, you want to touch them, you want to look in their eyes, you want to kiss them, feel them, but you also take their life and hold it as if it were precious as your own, don't you?
Absolutely.
Yes. You want to see inside them.
You want to see inside them, you want to be in their life with them. And one way that I once defined it was that when you love someone, you enshrine the very life story of that person in your own heart. Mm-hmm. And you carry their life story. Well, it's the same with the goddess Sophia, the planetary goddess. Empathy with her means that you carry her story in your heart as you would a beloved person in your life.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that empathy is fostered by recounting the story and living the story over and over again. What the people working with me now do, for instance, what I call the crew of the Gaian navigation experiment are doing, is that we are simply living this mythology that was received in the face of great peril and destruction, that survived from the ancient mysteries. The sacred narrative of the divine Sophia is the birthright of the human species. It is our divine birthright to know the story of who we are, who created us, where the earth came from, and what we are doing here. And the connection to that story is empathic. It's not merely intellectual.
Of course, yes. Yes. Exactly. It's love. It involves love, and it involves a desire to merge with the history of where we come from and what we are.
That's right. And a species like us I said when I set up metahistory.org in 2002, it went online, I think, in July 2002, one of the first statements I made is that the human creature is a storytelling animal. We are storytelling beings. We depend more than other animals on stories. And so we're going to be lost as a species if we don't know the story of our species. I mean, how could it be more simple than that?
Yeah.
And those people who say today, well, we can't really know the story of our species, I say wrong. I say wrong. I say that there were generations of people, the Teleste, who maintained these mystery schools, the founders of the Magian order, which can be traced all the way back to 6000 BC, who knew this story and preserved and honored and revered this story. They knew, and we can know again.
Did you say Magian order? Can you define?
Yeah, the Magian order, Magian.
Yes.
The Magian order is the ancient prehistoric root of the historically recognized Gnostic movements. And it's an order that was founded in northern Iran, in an area called the Urmian Plateau, on the southern border of the Caucasus Mountains, okay? And it was founded around 6000 BC, and that is the ancient taproot that evolved over many centuries into what is historically recognized as the network of the pagan mystery schools and the networks of the Gnostic movement. And it was essentially a shamanic order. It was a shamanic school, a shamanic tradition involving both men and women who were trained seers and who worked in teams of 2 and 4 and 8 and 16 in order to carry this knowledge and in order to preserve the birthright of humanity, which is the truth about our origins and the Archons and the planet Earth itself. And that all began in the Magian order and came down to us historically in the Gnostics.
So, John,
you'll find a long essay on that on metahistory.org. Just go to the homepage and in the search bar, just type Magian order, and the article will come up.
Okay, thank you.
Fantastic. I just wanted to ask a question in reference to what you have said up to now. Once we realize all this, right, and we know that we need to go back into the origins and be connected back to the mother, Sophia. What does it really look like, if you can even express this, that if humanity were to actually do this, how do we rid ourselves from the infestation that we see now with these Archons, and how do we get back on track?
Well, of course, that's a huge question, and it's a question that looms over us heavily right now, doesn't it? We're obviously in an endgame scenario.
Yep.
In some respects. We're obviously in an apocalyptic scenario. All those insane people who believe in the apocalypse and believe in that salvationist paradigm and the end moment when God rewards the ones who follow his rules and punishes all who don't. You have to realize that there are many people who want to see that scenario happen.
Yeah.
My God, yeah, unfortunately, yeah.
Yeah, their imaginations have been infected.
Yes.
With this archonic plant. It's what Carlos Castaneda called a foreign installation. Salvationist religion doesn't even belong on this planet. Patriarchy doesn't even belong on this planet. It's a foreign installation in the human mind, which has been propagated itself now through centuries, and is reaching a culmination point. And what's going to happen at this culmination point? I really can't say. I never predict. And I'm not a person who claims to be able to see the future. I just try to see the present, as clearly as I can. I do, if I were going to speculate, and I don't like to do this, but if I were going to speculate, I would have to say that there may be a clue in the Greek syntax from Nag Hammadi for this term correction. We are living at the moment of Sophia's correction. Of that I'm certain. We are living at the moment when she herself, embedded now in the experiment, realizes what has gone wrong and wants to correct the experiment from within. Well, first of all, she cannot do that without a degree of human participation.
Sure thing.
This is another way in which the Aeon Sophia and the true Aeonic gods are unlike these phony gods that have been sold to us. You know, the real God doesn't need human participation, does he? The off-planet Father God doesn't need human participation. He just wants obedience, right?
Right, obedience, exactly.
Yeah. Well, she doesn't want obedience, and she doesn't even want service. She wants co-creation and collaboration.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Right. So we're at that moment, and this is the moment of her correction, but the Greek word for that is diorthosis, and I pointed out that the word diorthosis consists of two parts. Di, which means dual or division, and orthosis, which means a correction or a regulation of something. To make it orthodox means to bring it around to its right functioning, okay, in the original meaning. So, diorthosis then may be a two-part solution. So I talk about this often. I think there may be, honestly speaking, a solution for those who participate with the goddess in her correction. That solution would be to become a kind of alchemical catalyst for the next stage of humanity. And for those who do not, it's compost.
Yeah.
And you're crazy if you think you can love all humanity, or they're all going to come along, or there's going to be some vast, massive planetary awakening. I don't really think so.
Yeah.
What I think is that there is an inevitable split. Now, I don't want that split, but I think the split has to happen. Look at it in a family constellation. You know about recovery and
Sure.
and the family constellations, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you have, say, a large family of, say, 20 people, an extended family, and there's a lot of dysfunction and sickness in that family, there may be alcoholism, there may be gambling, there may be sexual abuse, there may be incest, right?
Right.
It works like a mobile, if you might recall the analogy of John Bradshaw. The whole family construct works like a mobile. It's hanging there, and if you touch one part of it, the whole mobile vibrates, right?
Right.
Well, you probably know examples, and you may be them yourself, as I am. If you're going to survive and save your own life, you've got to get out of the family constellation.
Yep.
You got to get off the mobile.
Yep.
And let's go over here and let's make another mobile that is composed of healthy, synergetic relations between people who are bonded together in their love for the earth. Okay? It has to split. By the nature of the problem, it has to split.
Yeah.
It pains me to say that, but it does.
Yeah.
I believe, if I may say something now, or are you not
Sure.
finished with your thought there?
No, I'm finished. Fine.
Okay. I believe that what I'm calling the great separation has to take place. And I know this all one thing theory is popular, but the truth is we are not. The truth is I don't want to live as one with cancer. Or an infestation or sickness or psychopathy. I don't want to live with this. I'm not one with that, and I will never claim it. I really feel that there has to be something that is called frequency matching, where every entity or creature will be matched with their own vibration of whatever it is that they are. I think that's fair. But Ari mentioned something about what is the solution, or what does it look like, for humanity to get on board with the correction. And I would say, Ari, and we've talked about this a lot, is that it looks like, the Archons, as scary and as huge and as amazing and sci-fi as it all seems, and all of their interference, it's looking now like Archons are not the biggest obstacle to the problem. It looks more like humanity itself now is the obstacle to its own progression. It looks like humanity itself is the problem.
Yeah.
Well, I totally agree. And I have to point out, and I often do point this out, that although the Gnostic intel on the Archons, and we've only touched it, we've only just tweaked it briefly, is brilliant and extremely helpful. The Gnostics never blamed the Archons for the problems of humanity. Oh, no. We're responsible for our own problems. What the Archons do is they exaggerate the problem. They carry it out into realms of fabrication and simulation. They carry it into fraud. That's why everything is fraud today.
Yes.
Human beings could maybe be dishonest with each other, and they could cheat each other and deceive each other. But if we were just confined to each other, we could work those things out. But when the deceit and cheating and fraud perpetrated by human beings gets to be extrapolated by archonic devices, then it just blows completely out of control. So the primary role of the Archons is to exaggerate our problems so that they become unmanageable. But at the end of the day, it's still our problems, I'm of the opinion, I really like what you just said. It's very helpful in bringing this interview around now more and more to the solution. I have one other thing I want to say as well, but I like what you said very much, because one of the things that I emphasize with the Gaia navigation experiment is, to some extent, and to maybe even to a great extent, you can count on the whole archonic matrix to collapse by itself. And
I love that. I love that. Can you repeat that?
Yeah.
Can you repeat that? Oh, I love that.
In the moment of Sophia's correction, it is fair and reasonable to count on the archonic matrix collapsing by itself to a very large degree. It collapses under the massive complexity and encumberment of its own nature. I'll give you an example, and this is a really vivid example, very contemporary. There's a big hullabaloo going on now about Snowden and, the whistleblower thing, and everybody is so outraged because the NSA and the government is gathering all this information on us, and we're being surveyed. But let me tell you, the Gnostics told us that we were being surveyed, 6,000 years ago.
Exactly.
We've been under heavy surveillance by the Archons for a very, very long time.
I know, thank you. Oh, that is good.
No surprise.
No surprise. And so what's happening now? Well, the Archons have infected human imagination. This is what they do when your imagination is not in the story and in empathy with her story. Your imagination becomes deviant. So
imagination is key here. Yes.
Yeah, it's a great power it's a great tool of solution. So human beings have become so infected with the archonic imagination and the archonic surveillance insanity that we're surveilling ourselves for the Archons.
Yeah.
Oh,
thank you. Yes.
But the problem is, look at what's happening. Look at the information that they're gathering. DARPA failed because they couldn't manage the information. Mm-hmm. And DARPA, that was like 10 years ago. Now they've tried to reboot DARPA in PRISM and in this other big program that they have. They're not going to be able to manage it. The whole thing is going to fail and collapse under the absolute encumberment of all that data.
Yes. Can I say something about that?
Sure.
All of this data, isn't it true that all of this data is not really being looked at by human beings itself, but all of this data is being collected by artificial intelligence and analyzed by artificial intelligence?
That's right.
Right.
Talk about doing the Archons' work for them.
I know. There are very few humans behind this.
There's very few humans behind it. And the trouble is, and not the trouble, but the wonderful news is, as the Archons said, as the Gnostics said about the Archons, their method is absurdity. They don't really have a grand plan. This is a mistake to think that the Archons have an agenda. their only agenda is to take away from us that which they cannot have, you know? And so they don't have freedom. They don't have free will, like a human being does, according to the design of this experiment. We're given free will. They don't have that, so they want to take away our free will. They want to take away everything. They're like people who envy something they can't have, so they don't want you to have it, so they're going to destroy it. And in their effort to do so, they're going to destroy themselves. And this is largely inevitable. And so what I'm saying today, coming around again to solution, is that let's get the intel on the Archons, all right? And let's learn as much as we can about them in the Gnostic perspective. The Gnostics explain how you can use sexual energy to repel Archons. It's the best thing for repelling Archons, is a healthy sex life. Did you know that?
Had no idea.
Yep.
No, didn't know that.
Go read the Gospel of Philip. Go into metahistory.org and go to the site guide and go down to what is called the Archon Files, and there's an essay called Kundalini and the Alien Force.
Huh.
And that essay cites extensively from the Gospel of Philip, which is one of the longer and better preserved documents in the Nag Hammadi books, in which they describe how the initiates of the mysteries created around themselves an impermeable aura of golden light called an Imphion by sexual practices. But you don't even have to do sexual practices. You can, if you want, sexual ritual to raise that energy if you wish, but just a good healthy sex life will repel the Archons. Also, there's another document in Nag Hammadi, I think it's called the Second Apocalypse of James, in which it describes an encounter with Archons. And the teacher, the Gnostic teacher in that document, tells the person who is facing the Archons in a close encounter how to repel them, what to say to them. And this is what you say. You say, I recognize you, my cousin. You're my cosmic cousin, you Archon, because you come from the same mother. But you are not from the source, the galactic center, as I am. And I remember my origin, and I remember who is the mother of my species. And you are not that. And when you speak that way to an Archon, the Archon will leave.
Wow.
Okay, John, I have a question because you just raised something that can be of concern to a lot of people. Now, you say sexual energy can repel the Archons.
Mm-hmm.
You're saying just a basic healthy sexual life can repel them, but there is pandemic pedophilia and sickness going on with what a lot of those people feel is a healthy sexuality that they possess.
Good point.
And there is a distinctive differentiation, and I would like if you can please make that distinction.
Well, this is a horrible topic.
Yeah.
And yet it brings the conversation around to a point. I think that we have to go through this. We have to face this point. I was just saying that the problem of the Archons is vast, but it's manageable with Gnostic intel. But at the same time, let's bear in mind that there's a greater problem than the Archons on this planet, and it's called psychopaths and pedophiles and interspecies predators. Now, I coined this term, interspecies predators, a few years back, and I wrote a few articles about it. When you look at the human species, you find that we are, among all the creatures, the wonderful creatures in this habitat of the wisdom goddess, that we are the ones that prey upon our own kind. And by far, the most vicious form of that predation is pedophilia first, and then rape of a man or woman. These two acts committed by human beings are worse than murder. And we have to start facing this reality in our midst. The reality of psychopathy is a necessary lesson for any people who want to be engaged in Sophia's correction. Okay? Now, I don't know how to answer what you just said. People who claim that pedophilia is healthy sexuality, or even certain forms of homosexuality are healthy sexuality. What do I say to them? Well, I guess I have to make it really personal, you know. It don't look healthy to me, and I don't want any of that kind of behavior in my world. That's the only thing I can say. I'm not going to stand back and pronounce some grandiose statement about it from the pulpit.
Right.
Personally, I don't accept that behavior in my world. And you talk about humanity waking up. You know, if people really wake up, then they would acquire the ability to detect these predators in their families, in their communities, and in the government, and in the levels of the power elite. Wouldn't you say so?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's really waking up.
Yeah. We were not prepared for this degree of sickness, I don't think.
No, we weren't. We weren't, and I think that it was impossible to foresee, even for the Gnostics themselves, the extent to which the sickness and brutality of patriarchy would take us.
Yes.
But we're there, and we just got to face it. You know? And that brings up another subject, which I wouldn't want to get into in this talk because it would kind of maybe topple the apple cart. But it's a subject that I talk about a lot, and that is the exceptional and extreme capacity for violence in the human species.
Mm-hmm.
That itself is a subject that is on the agenda right now.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we'll save that for another talk.
Let's do that.
Like.
Let's.
But if I may, I have one last question, and I want to read something from your book, actually, Not in His Image. And I want to, because this touches upon the aspect of some of these creatures being actually physical beings, right? Which a lot of people do not believe. But I just want to read this passage. And you say, arrogant by nature, the demiurge deems himself to be at the center of creation, Lord of all he beholds. Gnostic texts state plainly that Yaldabaoth is insane, a demented god, or impostor deity. The demiurge is indeed a sort of god, a cosmic entity in his own right, but he is not a pleromic aeon. He is a self-deified, inorganic phantom, deluded about his own identity. This is not meant as a figure of speech or a mythological trope, not by a long shot. For the Gnostic materials clearly show that the adepts of the mysteries perceive Yaldabaoth and the Archons as real, physically existent inhabitants of our planetary system who wrongly attempt to penetrate the biosphere. End quote. And I think this clearly states that these are physical beings, are they not? Because a lot of people don't understand that there are physical beings who are these creatures.
Yes, that's right. The Gnostics identified two types of the archontic entity. The drone or hive type, which is of a neonate nature, described as an aborted fetus, which you may interpret to mean a prematurely born fetus. So that is to say, a large head and spindly limbs. So we know what that looks like, don't we?
Yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
That's the fabulous and well-known gray E.T.
Mm-hmm.
And then there is a reptilian type, which is described in the cosmological text by the Greek word drakona, D-R-A-K-O-N-A, draconic or reptilian type. Okay? And that is the overlord that rules the hordes of the embryonic types. This is the picture. Can you imagine that this intel comes from documents that are 1,600 years old, which themselves are derived from an oral tradition thousands of years old?
Amazing.
Actually, it's relieving that they do, because it shows the history and what's been going on here.
Yeah,
and it also shows that there were on this earth human beings accomplished enough in parapsychology and in paranormal experience to be able to detect and profile these beings, that to me is extremely positive to know.
Yep.
Yes.
And it seems to me that we would do well to follow their intel and to honor their intel, not just blindly as authorities, but because it comes from a valid source in the past, and it can be verified today, as these two profiles have been verified countless times.
Yeah.
Yes.
The gray ETs and the reptilians.
The evidence is everywhere.
The evidence is everywhere. Now, the thing that people mistake, and I want to clarify these 2 points, I'm glad to have this opportunity. Those cyborg-type entities and their reptilian overlords inhabit the solar system. They don't live on Earth. They probably have their main headquarters on Saturn, I would say. Mm-hmm. And they exist, yes, physically, but they are ETs. They are extraterrestrial. And at the same time, there is a speculation going around attached to the loose usage of the word Archon. Oh, well, they've become human now. You know, there are Archons walking around in human form. Well, yes and no. That is false in the sense that these actual cyborg beings have not been able to transform themselves directly into human beings. That's not true in that sense. They do something that's even worse. They transform us to be like them. So there are totally archontified human beings walking around on this planet who have lost their humanity, lost their conscience, operating by remote control from an external source, which is Yaldabaoth, the demiurge. And although they have flesh and blood and eyes and hair and fingernails like you and me, they are no longer human.
Wow.
And a lot of them are running the defense organizations. And a lot of them are employed in the secret services. But a lot of them are just sitting around watching television with, with dinner trays on their laps.
And being pedophiles and stuff like that.
And being pedophiles and stuff. So, we're down to the last few minutes.
Yep.
I'd like to make one more point, if I could, about solution.
Definitely.
I distinguish between truth and the truth. And by truth I mean something in the universal or cosmic sense. Let's say, could I say truth on the planetary scale? What is true for the planet? What is true on the planetary scale? That's truth. Then there is the truth. Now, the truth has many facets. For instance, you can say, well, what is the truth about 9/11, right? Or what is the truth about the Kennedy assassination, right?
Right.
Well, obviously, if you inquire in that direction, you're going to find out that the truth is extremely complicated. It's like a huge jigsaw puzzle, right?
Yeah.
Many different features. There are many different aspects, and many people can contribute to the truth. And so we can all have a part of the puzzle when it comes to the truth. But when it comes to truth, that's not so. And so I like to say that you cannot have, in regard to the solution for this planet, do you want to know what the solution for the human species is? Well, you need first to know this. You cannot have a part of that solution. You can only have the whole solution and know your part in it. What is so powerful and unique and beautiful about the Gnostic message is it offers to every single person to know the whole solution and then find your part in the whole solution. I know the whole solution. And the people who work with me in the framework of the Sophianic narrative know the whole solution. But when I say that, I want you to understand that it's an evolving solution. It's an open-ended solution. Doesn't mean that I know that I'm omniscient or that I know the absolute end and outcome of everything. But it means that truth on the planetary scale is a fractal event. It's not a jigsaw puzzle. The Sophianic vision narrative replicates itself fractally in every imagination of every single human individual. It is fractally, totally present in your imagination. Totally present. The whole narrative. And when you have that, then you can see where you as an individual fit into that narrative. But if you do not have the whole solution, you cannot realize truth on a planetary scale.
Indeed.
Okay. And can you speak about, in speaking of solutions, the calling of the warrior, and an aspect of that which I personally love, which is being ruthless?
Well, yes. Being ruthless means don't show idiot compassion for predators and people who are doing harm to others or going to do you harm. You know, one of the greatest lies that was propagated in Salvationist religion was the lie that says that if you forgive your enemies and love your enemies, it's going to make a better world.
Right.
Well, as I said, and not in his image, I think it's the enemies who wrote that rule.
Yeah.
Right.
Because it certainly works for them if you love them and forgive them, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
And how can they continue to go on and repeat their perpetration?
Because they were forgiven.
That's right, and because no one is standing up to them.
Right.
And so the story of how we are dedicated to life and the beauty of this experiment stand up to those who are against this experiment, well, that's the subject of another conversation, if you will.
We will.
Yeah, I have a feeling.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Beginning of many.
We want to get into as many details of that as we possibly can.
Well, excellent.
Absolutely,
Excellent.
yeah.
Well, the puma is poised.
Awesome. Well, we're down to our final minutes here, and I just wanted to reiterate, of course, for all our listeners to be able to visit your website at metahistory.org, which is just so full of information. I mean, it's an encyclopedia, actually, and pretty much all the stuff that we're talking about is right there. Is that pretty accurate?
Yes, it is. All the source materials and a great deal of this. Go to the Archon files and you'll find 10 or 12 long essays that flesh out what we've been talking about.
Fantastic. Any last words, John?
Well, I just want to say that if you're wondering how the planetary goddess can, how you can reach her, well, good, wonder about it. Carry that with you through your day, and also wonder about how she can reach you. And I'll give you a clue on that she does it through beauty.
Beauty, yes, exactly, yes.
Wow.
Perfect.
As simple as that.
My favorite word, yes.
I know. That's what you live for right there.
I live for beauty, yes. I blog about it, yes. Every day and everywhere in my life, everything.
So it's time to connect with our mother, and I strongly also recommend John's new book, Not in His Image. It is absolutely amazing. It is fascinating, and I don't have any way, just so you know, Serena, to read any of the information that you're sending at this moment, but just wanted to let everybody know that they can obtain the book at Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, and can they obtain it also on your website, John?
No, just go to the usual sources.
Okay, fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for being with us today. It's going to be the first of many, many wonderful chats as we explore this situation that we face ourselves with. There are solutions. We just need to get together on this, be on the same page with this, and realize that there is an amazing story that we just need to, be involved with, realize what we're facing, and I believe that together we're going to meet this challenge and finally eradicate these things that do not belong here. So thank you all very much for joining us. John, again, thank you so much. Serena for being co-host. And we'll see each other again next Saturday, 6 p.m. Pacific Time, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Shattering the Matrix. Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night.
You've been listening to Shattering the Matrix with your host, Ari Kopel and Serena. Please visit our website, 2012emergence.com. That's 2012emergence.com. Find us on Twitter at Matrix Shattered and like us on Facebook at facebook.com/Shattering the Matrix. Listen to archived shows at blogtalkradio.com/Shattering the Matrix. And join us next time for the birth of the new golden era on Shattering the Matrix.